The space was dark and endless. Stars glowed like tiny lights scattered across a black sheet. Among them, several ships moved in formation. They were coalition vessels traveling together for safety. The coalition was a group of different alien species who worked together. They had been fighting a war against the Krell Empire for many years now. Commander Jacob Harris stood on the bridge of his ship. His ship was called the Vanguard. Jacob was a human. Though most beings in the galaxy did not know humans still existed. He was tall with short brown hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He wore a dark blue uniform with silver markings on the shoulders. Next to him stood Kate Morgan. She was his second officer and a very skilled pilot. Kate had long black hair tied back in a neat style. Her fingers moved quickly across the control panels in front of her. She was watching the coalition ships on her screens. The bridge was quiet except for the soft beeping of computers. Several other crew members sat at their stations. Everyone was focused on their work. They had been watching these coalition ships for 3 days now. The ships did not know the Vanguard was there. Human technology could hide ships very well. Kate suddenly looked up from her screen. Her face showed concern. She spoke to Jacob in a calm voice, but he could hear the worry in her words. She told him that Krell ships were approaching. There were 5 of them, and they were big warships. The Coalition Patrol only had 3 small vessels. They would not survive a fight against 5 Krell warships. Jacob moved closer to look at Kate's screen. He could see the red dots representing Krell ships moving toward the blue dots of the Coalition Patrol. The distance between them was closing fast. In just a few minutes, the Krell would be close enough to attack. The Krell were a dangerous species. They looked like giant insects with hard shells covering their bodies. They were strong fighters who wanted to control the entire galaxy. For 7 years, they had been at war with the Coalition. Many worlds had been destroyed. Millions had died. The Coalition was losing this war slowly. Jacob knew what would happen if he did nothing. The 3 Coalition ships would try to fight. They would fail. All the crew members on those ships would die. It would be another small victory for the Krell. Another step toward their goal of complete control. But if Jacob helped the Coalition ships, everything would change. For 300 years, humans had stayed hidden from the galaxy. They had left the known worlds and disappeared. Most species thought humans were extinct. Some believed humans had never existed at all. They were just old stories told to children. Jacob made his decision quickly. He had been trained his whole life for this moment. His orders from Earth Command were clear. When the time was right, reveal humanity's presence. Help the Coalition. Stop the Krell from winning this war. He turned to Paul Griffin, his weapons officer. Paul was young but very skilled. He had red hair and freckles on his face. His hands rested on the weapons controls, ready to act. Jacob gave him the order. Charge all weapons. Prepare to attack the Krell ships. Paul's eyes went wide for just a second. Then he nodded and began pressing buttons. Lights on his panel changed from blue to red. Numbers scrolled across his screens. The ship's powerful weapons were coming online. Energy built up in the weapon systems. The Vanguard was ready for battle. Kate looked at Jacob. She knew what this meant. Once they attacked, there was no going back. Humanity would no longer be hidden. The entire galaxy would know they existed. She asked him if he was sure about this decision. Jacob nodded slowly. He was sure. These Coalition beings did not deserve to die just because humans wanted to stay hidden. Besides, the Krell were getting too strong. If they defeated the Coalition, they would eventually find human worlds. Better to fight now with allies than later while alone. The Krell ships reached the Coalition patrol. Red beams of energy shot out from the Krell warships. They hit the Coalition shields with terrible force. One Coalition ship exploded immediately. Its pieces scattered into space. The other 2 ships tried to fight back, but their weapons barely scratched the Krell shields. Jacob gave the command. The Vanguard dropped its hiding technology and appeared on everyone's sensors. Then it accelerated forward at incredible speed. Human engines were much faster than anything the Coalition or Krell had. The Vanguard crossed the distance in seconds. Paul pressed the firing button. The Vanguard's main weapons were called magnetic accelerator cannons. They shot solid metal projectiles at extremely high speeds. These projectiles hit with enormous force. Unlike energy weapons, they never ran out of power as long as ammunition remained. The first shots hit a Krell warship directly. The Krell shields lit up bright orange, then failed completely. The metal projectiles punched through the ship's armor like it was paper. Explosions erupted along the Krell ship's hull. Air and flames vented into space. The second volley hit another Krell warship. This one tried to turn away, but it was too slow. More projectiles slammed into its side. The ship began spinning out of control. Its weapons stopped firing. Internal explosions could be seen through holes in its hull. The remaining 3 Krell ships changed their targets. They forgot about the coalition vessels and focused all their weapons on the Vanguard. Energy beams and missiles flew toward the human ship. But the Vanguard's shields were strong. The attacks hit the shields and dissipated without causing damage. On the coalition ships, crew members stared at their screens in shock. They could not believe what they were seeing. An unknown vessel had appeared from nowhere. It was destroying Krell warships with ease. This was impossible. Nothing could defeat Krell shields so quickly. Kate worked her controls to send a message to the coalition ships. She told them not to worry. The Vanguard was here to help. They should fall back and let the human ship handle the Krell. The coalition ships slowly moved away from the battle. Their commanders were confused but grateful. They watched as the strange new ship continued fighting the Krell warships. Paul fired again and again. Each shot was perfectly aimed. The Vanguard moved in patterns that confused the Krell targeting systems. Jacob had trained his crew well. They worked together like parts of a machine. 10 minutes later, it was over. All 5 Krell warships were either destroyed or badly damaged. The damaged ones tried to escape, jumping away to faster speeds. They fled back to Krell space. The Vanguard did not chase them. The message had been sent. Jacob opened a communication channel to the coalition ships. His face appeared on their screens. The coalition crew saw a being they did not recognize. 2 eyes, short hair, smooth skin. This was not any species they knew. Jacob spoke clearly. He introduced himself as Commander Jacob Harris of the human vessel Vanguard. He said that humanity was offering its help to the coalition. The war against the Krell concerned all beings in the galaxy. Humans could no longer stand by and watch. There was a long silence. Then one of the coalition commanders responded. Her voice was shaking. She asked if he was really human. The legend said humans were extinct. They had vanished 300 years ago. How could this be real? Jacob smiled slightly. He understood her shock. He explained that humans had not vanished. They had chosen to leave the known galaxy for a while. They needed time to grow and develop. Now they were ready to return. And they were ready to fight alongside the coalition against the Krell threat. Kate watched the coalition ships on her screen. Their sensors were probably going crazy trying to analyze the Vanguard. They would find advanced technology they had never seen before. They would realize that humans had not been idle during their 3 centuries away. Jacob ended the communication by saying the coalition should report this encounter to their leaders. Humanity wanted to meet with the Coalition High Council. There was much to discuss. Working together, they could stop the Krell Empire from conquering the galaxy. As the communication ended, Kate turned to Jacob. She said quietly that there was no going back now. The entire galaxy would soon know that humans existed. Everything was about to change. Jacob nodded. He looked out at the stars through the bridge windows. Change was exactly what the galaxy needed. The Krell had been winning because no one could match their military power. Now someone could. Humanity had returned, and they brought with them hope for a different future. The Coalition High Council met in a huge round room on Nexus Prime. This was the capital world where all the coalition leaders gathered. The room had seats rising up in circles going higher and higher. Each seat held a representative from a different species. There were 47 different species in total. In the center of the room, a large hologram floated in the air. It showed the battle from 3 days ago. Everyone watched as the unknown ship destroyed the Krell warships. The Krell were supposed to be the strongest military force in the galaxy, but this new ship had beaten them easily. When the video ended, the room exploded with noise. Everyone started talking at once. Some voices sounded scared. Others sounded excited. Many sounded confused. The noise grew louder and louder until nothing could be understood. Chancellor Vrick stood up from his seat. He was tall and looked like a large lizard walking on 2 legs. His green scales reflected the light in the room. He had been leading the council for 20 years. His voice was deep and powerful. When he called for silence, everyone gradually stopped talking. Vrix looked around at all the representatives. He could see many different emotions on their faces. Fear was the most common one. Fear of the unknown was something all species shared, no matter how different they looked from each other. Ambassador Lyra spoke first. She came from the Crystalline Collective. Her body was made of living crystal that sparkled with many colors. When light hit her, rainbows danced around the room. She was very intelligent and had studied ancient history for many years. Lyra's voice sounded like music when she spoke. She asked if anyone truly believed the message they received. The message claimed to be from humans, but humans were gone. They had disappeared over 300 years ago. All their colonies had been found empty. Their worlds were silent and abandoned. How could they suddenly come back? Several other representatives nodded in agreement. The idea seemed impossible. Humans were legends now. They were stories told to young ones. Some species did not even believe humans had ever existed. They thought humans were just myths made up by ancient storytellers. General Corvin stood up to speak next. He was massive, much bigger than most other beings in the room. His body looked like a giant insect with a hard shell. He had 4 arms and 2 legs. His eyes were compound eyes that could see in many directions at once. He commanded the Coalition's military forces. Corvin's voice was rough and direct. He said that legends and stories did not matter right now. What mattered was power. That ship in the video had destroyed 5 Krell warships in minutes. The Coalition's best ships could not do that. Their weapons barely damaged Krell shields. But this unknown vessel had crushed those shields like they were nothing. He continued speaking. The identity of the ship's crew did not matter as much as their capabilities. Whether they were human or not, they had technology far beyond what the Coalition possessed. The real question was simple. Were they friends or enemies? Would they help the Coalition or would they become another threat? Chancellor Vrix nodded slowly. Corvin had made a good point. He cut through all the confusion and focused on what was important. Vrix suggested they invite this Commander Harris and his crew to Nexus Prime. They should meet face to face. If these beings really were human, the Council needed to understand what that meant. The Council voted. Most representatives agreed to the meeting. A message was sent to the Vanguard. Commander Harris accepted the invitation immediately. He said he would arrive in 3 days. 3 days later, the Vanguard entered orbit around Nexus Prime. Kate stood next to Jacob as they prepared to go down to the planet's surface. She wore her best uniform. It was dark blue with silver buttons. Her hands were shaking slightly, though she tried to hide it. Kate asked Jacob if he thought the Council would believe them. Jacob looked at her and smiled a little. He said belief was not something they could control. They would tell the truth. Then the Council would decide what to do with that truth. Their shuttle flew down through the atmosphere. Kate looked out the window at Nexus Prime below. The planet was beautiful. Cities blended perfectly with forests and oceans. Buildings were designed to work with nature instead of destroying it. It showed what different species could build when they cooperated. When they arrived at the Council chamber, Kate felt small. The room was even bigger than she had imagined. The ceiling seemed impossibly high. Seats filled with strange beings rose up all around them. Dozens of eyes stared down at her and Jacob. Guards escorted them to the center of the floor. This was where the hologram had been shown. Now it was empty except for them. Kate could feel the weight of all those stares. Every representative was studying them carefully, trying to understand what they were seeing. Chancellor Vrix spoke first. His voice was formal and careful. He welcomed them to Nexus Prime and thanked them for saving the Coalition patrol. He acknowledged that their ship had shown impressive power. Then he asked Jacob to explain who he was and why he was in Coalition space. Jacob stepped forward. He spoke clearly so everyone could hear. His voice did not shake. He had practiced this speech many times. He explained that humanity had never disappeared. They had made a choice 300 years ago to leave the known galaxy. Back then, humans faced many problems. They fought among themselves. Other species threatened them. So human leaders made a difficult decision. They would seal their borders and hide their colonies. They would focus on fixing their problems and developing their civilization without outside interference. For 300 years, humanity worked in secret. They unified their governments. They improved their technology. They built a strong civilization that could stand proud among the stars, not as weak newcomers but as equals to any other species. Kate activated a small device she carried. Holograms appeared in the air above them. The images showed human worlds with huge cities, Fleets of ships filled with advanced vessels, massive space stations orbiting planets, factories and research centers spread across many systems. The representatives stared at the images in shock. The scale was enormous. Humans had not just survived their isolation. They had built an impressive empire while everyone thought they were extinct. Ambassador Lyra's crystal body pulsed with bright colors. She was clearly agitated. She asked the obvious question. If humans had been building such a great civilization, why reveal themselves now? What had changed to make them come out of hiding? Jacob turned to face her directly. His expression became serious. He explained that humanity had never stopped watching the galaxy. They observed when the coalition formed. They watched it grow. They also watched the Krell Empire expand and become more aggressive. The Krell were dangerous. They did not want peace or cooperation. They wanted control of everything. The war with the coalition was just the beginning of their plans. Human intelligence agents had learned that the Krell intended to conquer the entire galaxy, every world, every species, everything. If the Krell defeated the coalition, they would keep expanding. Eventually, they would discover human space. Then humanity would have to fight alone against a much stronger enemy. It made more sense to help the coalition now. Together, they had a better chance of stopping the Krell. General Corvin leaned forward in his seat. His interest was clear. He asked about the Vanguard's weapons. How had they broken through Krell shields so easily? What other technology did human ships have? Could they share these weapons with the coalition? Jacob smiled slightly. He said humanity would be willing to share some of their technology. But a full exchange would require negotiations and formal agreements. First, the Council needed to make a decision. Did they want humanity's help or not? The room fell silent. Everyone was thinking about what they had just learned. The legends were real. Humans existed. They had advanced technology. They were offering an alliance that could change the entire war. But accepting their help meant trusting beings who had hidden for 3 centuries. It meant depending on a species that most thought was just a myth. It was a difficult choice. Chancellor Vrick stood up. He announced that the Council would vote on this matter tomorrow. Tonight, everyone should think carefully about what had been presented. This decision would affect the future of every species in the coalition. As Jacob and Kate left the chamber, they could hear the representatives talking excitedly behind them. Some voices sounded hopeful. Others sounded worried. But everyone was talking about humans. After 300 years of silence, humanity was the most important topic in the galaxy. The Coalition Council voted the next morning. The vote was not unanimous, but the majority agreed. They would accept humanity's offer of alliance. Many representatives still had doubts, but the war situation was desperate. They needed any advantage they could get. Within 2 weeks, military leaders from both sides began planning their first joint operation. The target was a Krell supply depot in the Terminus sector. This depot supplied weapons, fuel, and food to 3 entire Krell battle groups. If they could capture or destroy it, the Krell would be weakened significantly. The war room aboard the Coalition flagship was crowded. Jacob stood next to a large holographic display showing the depot and its defenses. General Corvin was there along with several Coalition admirals. Captain Nicole Brooks also attended. She commanded the human destroyer called Relentless. Nicole was short with blonde hair cut in a military style. She looked young, but her eyes showed experience. She had fought in many battles before humanity went into isolation. Despite her age, she commanded one of the most advanced warships in the human fleet. General Corvin pointed at the hologram with one of his 4 arms. His claws traced the defensive positions around the depot. He explained that the depot was protected by automated weapons platforms. There were also 3 Krell cruisers permanently stationed there. Plus a field of mines surrounded the entire area. The Coalition had tried to take this depot twice before. Both attempts had failed badly. Many ships were lost. Many crew members died. The defenses were too strong for a direct assault to work. Nicole studied the hologram carefully. She looked at the mine patterns and how the weapons platforms were positioned. She asked about the mines. Were they triggered by nearby ships? Or could they be remotely controlled? This was important information for planning their approach. Admiral Gorath answered her question. Gorath looked like a large slug with multiple tentacles. He commanded the Coalition fleet in this sector. He said the mines had proximity triggers. They also had backup remote detonation systems. Worse, they were equipped with artificial intelligence that let them move and adjust their positions. Jacob looked at Nicole. They had discussed this problem during their flight here. Nicole gave him a small nod. She knew what to say. She turned to the assembled officers and explained that human electronic warfare technology could handle intelligent minds. Nicole described special drones carried by the Relentless. These drones were designed to hack into artificial intelligence systems. They could take control of AI minds and turn them against their original programming. The drones would approach the minefield carefully. Once close enough, they would hack the mines and either shut them down or redirect them toward the weapons platforms. General Corvin's mandibles clicked together. This was a sign of approval in his species. He said if they could neutralize the mines, coalition forces could handle the rest. The weapons platforms and cruisers were dangerous but not impossible to defeat. The mines were the real problem. Everyone agreed the plan was good. The attack was scheduled for the next day. The combined fleet would consist of 15 coalition vessels and 3 human ships. Besides the Vanguard and Relentless, there was also the frigate Defiant commanded by Captain Gregory Shaw. The next day arrived quickly. Kate sat at her station on the Vanguard's bridge. The fleet had just dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Terminus Sector. Her screens immediately filled with data. She began scanning the depot's defenses. Everything matched the intelligence reports. 3 Krell cruisers patrolled near the depot. 47 weapons platforms formed a defensive grid around it. Approximately 200 mines filled the space between the platforms and the fleet's position. Nicole's voice came through the communication channel. The Relentless was beginning drone deployment. Jacob acknowledged her message and ordered the fleet to hold formation. Timing was crucial. If they moved too early, the Krell would detect the drones. If they waited too long, the mines might drift into different positions. The drones were small and difficult to detect. They used very little power to avoid showing up on sensors. They drifted slowly toward the minefield, looking like small pieces of space debris. The Krell sensors did not notice them at all. Kate watched her displays with intense focus. The drones were making contact with the mines now. Computer code flashed across her screen as the hacking programs went to work. The first mine's artificial intelligence was compromised and taken over. Then another. Then 10, 20, 50. The numbers kept climbing. 100 mines under human control. 150. The hacking programs were extremely effective. Human programmers had spent decades developing cyber warfare tools. These tools were far more advanced than anything the Krell had encountered before. Nicole reported that 173 mines were now under their control. The remaining mines had been deactivated and would not explode. The path through the minefield was clear. It was time to attack. Jacob gave the order. The entire fleet moved forward together. The Krell cruisers detected the movement immediately. They opened fire with their plasma weapons. Bright beams of energy crossed the distance between the two forces. But the Krell were confused. They expected the mines to explode and destroy the approaching ships. Instead, the mines were moving away from the fleet. The mines turned and accelerated toward the weapons platforms. The Krell realized too late that they had lost control of their own defenses. The weapons platforms tried to shoot down the approaching mines. They fired frantically in all directions. But there were too many mines coming too fast. Explosions began rippling across the defensive grid. Each explosion triggered more explosions. Within seconds, most of the weapons platforms were destroyed. Paul Griffin called out targets on the Vanguard. His hands moved quickly across his weapons console. The magnetic accelerator cannons fired. The solid projectiles crossed space at incredible speed and slammed into the first Krell cruiser. The Krell shields lit up bright orange under the kinetic assault. Then the shields failed completely. More projectiles punched through the cruiser's armor. Explosions erupted along its hull. The ship began to spin out of control as its systems failed. Coalition vessels engaged the remaining 2 Krell cruisers. Plasma beams and missiles filled the space around the depot. The battle was intense but short. The Krell fought bravely, but they were outmatched. The surprise attack and the loss of their defensive grid had doomed them from the start. Captain Shaw brought the Defiant in close to the depot itself. His ship deployed boarding teams. Human Marines in advanced combat armor entered the depot through airlocks. The Krell garrison tried to resist, but the Marines were better trained and better equipped. Within an hour, the depot was under coalition control. The Marines captured valuable intelligence data. computer files containing Krell military plans, supply routes, fleet positions, information about Krell technology and tactics. This intelligence would help the Coalition for months to come. 2 hours after the battle began, it was over. All 3 Krell cruisers were destroyed. The depot was captured. Human casualties were 0. Coalition casualties were minimal, just a few injuries and no deaths. General Corvin sent a direct message to Jacob. His voice held genuine respect, which was unusual for him. He admitted that the Coalition had underestimated human capabilities. Their technology and tactics were impressive. This victory proved that the alliance was beneficial to both sides. But Corvin also gave a warning. He said the Krell would not make the same mistake. News of this defeat would spread quickly. The Krell Empire would adjust their strategies. They would prepare for human technology and tactics. The easy victories were over. Jacob agreed completely. He knew this success would make the Krell more dangerous, not less. They would study what happened here. They would develop countermeasures. The next battle would be much harder, but that was a problem for another day. Right now, humanity and the Coalition had won their first victory together. They had fought side by side and succeeded. The alliance was no longer just words and promises. It was real, proven in combat. Kate looked at the debris field where the Krell cruisers had been. She felt relieved that the battle was over, but she also felt worried about the future. This was just the beginning. The real war was still ahead of them. News of the Terminus Sector defeat reached the Krell Empire quickly. Empress Valerix received the report while sitting in her throne chamber. The chamber was located aboard a massive mobile fortress called Dominion. This fortress was bigger than most moons and carried enough weapons to destroy entire planets. Valerix was very old by Krell standards. She had ruled the Empire for over 200 years. Her body was covered in a crimson shell that bore scars from countless battles. She had expanded Krell territory through clever planning and ruthless tactics. She never accepted defeat. Fleet Commander Draxon stood before her throne. His body was rigid with tension. He had just delivered the bad news about the depot. He had also told her about the humans, the legendary species that everyone thought was extinct. Valerix listened to his report in complete silence. Her compound eyes watched video footage of human ships destroying Krell vessels. She studied their tactics. She analyzed their weapons. She observed how they moved and fought. When Draxon finished speaking, Valerix remained quiet for a long time. The silence in the throne chamber was oppressive. Finally, she spoke. Her voice was cold and sharp like a blade. She said the humans were no longer legends. They were a real threat, an unknown variable in her carefully planned conquest. This could not be allowed. Draxon asked what order she wanted to give. Valerix's mandibles moved in what might have been a smile. The expression looked disturbing on her insect-like face. She commanded him to gather all available intelligence on human capabilities. She wanted to know everything about them, their ship designs, their weapon technology, their military strategies, where their worlds were located, what resources they controlled. Every piece of information was important. She also ordered Draxon to assemble Task Force Omega. This was her elite strike group. It consisted of her best commanders and most advanced vessels. If the humans thought they could challenge the Krell Empire, they would learn a harsh lesson. The Krell had not achieved dominance through technology alone. 3 weeks passed. Jacob was aboard the Vanguard reviewing patrol reports when Kate rushed into his ready room. Her face showed worry. She carried a datapad with an urgent message from Coalition intelligence. Kate reported that a massive Krell fleet had been detected. It was moving toward the frontier colonies. These were human settlements on the edge of human-controlled space. The fleet was enormous. 30 capital ships, dozens of support vessels, hundreds of fighters. Intelligence estimated they would reach the colonies in 5 days. Jacob stood up and walked to the window. He could see other ships in formation around the Vanguard, both human and Coalition vessels. 5 days was not much time to prepare a proper defense. He asked Kate about the colony's ability to defend themselves. Kate pulled up data on her pad. The frontier colonies had some orbital defense platforms. They also had a small garrison fleet, but nothing that could stand against 30 Krell capital ships. The colonists would need to be evacuated, or reinforcements would need to arrive in time to help defend them. Jacob made his decision immediately. He told Kate to send a priority message to Earth Command. Request immediate reinforcements. Every available ship should head to the frontier colonies. He also contacted General Corvin and the Coalition High Council. If the Krell wanted a major battle, they would get one. The combined human and Coalition fleet arrived at the frontier colonies 3 days later. Ships took up defensive positions around the 3 inhabited worlds. Evacuation of civilians began immediately. Non-essential personnel were moved to transport ships that would jump to safety if the battle went badly. Those who remained prepared for the coming fight. Weapons were checked and rechecked. Ammunition was loaded. Shield generators were tested. Everyone knew this battle would be different from previous engagements. This time, the Krell were coming in force. Nicole stood on the bridge of the Relentless reviewing tactical information. Long-range sensors had spotted the Krell fleet. They would arrive in approximately 18 hours. She noticed something unusual about their formation. The ships were more spread out than normal Krell doctrine suggested. She contacted Jacob to share her observation. Jacob agreed that something seemed wrong. The Krell were usually aggressive and direct in their approach. This spread formation suggested they expected strong resistance. They were planning something more complex than a straightforward assault. Captain Shaw joined the conversation from the Defiant. He suggested the Krell might attempt a pincer movement. The spread formation would allow them to attack from multiple directions at once. They could surround the defensive positions and strike from all sides simultaneously. Jacob acknowledged this possibility. He ordered the fleet to adjust their positions. Mobile elements would form a reserve force. This reserve could move quickly to respond to threats from any direction. The orbital platforms would serve as anchors for the main defensive line. As hours passed, tension built throughout the fleet. Crew members tried to rest, but most could not sleep. This would be the first major engagement between human forces and a full Krell battle fleet. All previous encounters had been small skirmishes and raids. This was completely different. Kate ran continuous scans of the approaching Krell fleet. She analyzed their formation carefully. Her computer identified what was likely the enemy flagship. It was at the center of the formation, surrounded by the strongest escort vessels. She brought this information to Jacob. If they could identify and disable the flagship, it might disrupt Krell coordination. The Krell command structure was very centralized. Without their flagship giving orders, the other ships might become confused and disorganized. Jacob studied the data. The flagship would be heavily defended. Getting close enough to attack it would be dangerous. But Kate was right. Taking out the command ship could turn the entire battle. It was a risk worth considering. The Krell fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel exactly on schedule. 30 massive capital ships appeared on sensors. They were accompanied by support vessels and fighter squadrons that immediately began spreading out in a wide pattern. Jacob opened a communication channel to all ships in the defensive fleet. His voice was calm and steady. He reminded everyone why they were here, what they were fighting for. The frontier colonies represented humanity's right to exist freely in the galaxy. The Coalition represented hope for peaceful cooperation among different species. The Krell Empire represented domination and conquest. They wanted to control everything and everyone. Today they would learn that some things were worth fighting for. Some lines could not be crossed without consequence. General Corvin added his own words from the Coalition flagship. He said the Coalition had faced the Krell for 7 long years. They had lost many battles and many brave warriors. But today they were not alone. Today they stood with allies who possessed strength and courage. Today they would show the Krell that their ambition would not succeed. The Krell fleet finished its deployment and began moving toward the defensive positions. Their formation split into 3 main groups, just as Shaw had predicted. They were attempting to surround the colonies and attack from multiple angles. Paul Griffin prepared his weapons. His hands hovered over the firing controls. He watched the targeting displays carefully. The Krell were still too far away for accurate shots, but that would change soon. Kate monitored all the sensor feeds. She tracked each Krell ship's position and trajectory. The information fed into tactical computers that calculated optimal defensive responses. Everything was ready. All they could do now was wait for the Krell to come into range. Nicole checked her ship's systems one final time. The Relentless was as ready as it could be. Her crew was experienced and well-trained. They would do their duty. She thought briefly about the colonists below, families who had built homes on these worlds.
Children who had never known war.
They were depending on this fleet to protect them. The Krell fleet continued its approach. They moved with confident precision. They had won many battles against the Coalition. They expected to win this one too. They did not know yet how much humanity would make them pay for their arrogance. Jacob watched the tactical display. The Krell would be in weapons range in less than 5 minutes. This was it, the moment that would determine everything. He took a deep breath and prepared to give orders that would send many beings to their deaths. War was terrible, but sometimes it was necessary. The Krell had chosen this path. They had chosen conquest over cooperation. Now they would face the consequences of that choice. The largest space battle in recent history was about to begin. The Krell fleet opened fire first. Hundreds of plasma beams and missiles launched from their ships. The weapons crossed the empty space between the two forces. Bright streaks of light filled the darkness. The orbital defense platforms responded immediately. Their heavy cannons tracked multiple targets and fired back. The battle had begun. Explosions lit up space like fireworks. Shields flared when hit by weapons. The noise would have been deafening if space carried sound. But in the vacuum, everything happened in eerie silence. Paul worked his console with intense concentration. The Vanguard's magnetic accelerator cannons fired in careful sequence. Each shot was calculated for maximum effect. Krell shields sparked and flickered under the kinetic bombardment. One cruiser broke formation as its shields completely overloaded. Nicole's prediction about Krell tactics proved accurate. The enemy fleet split into 3 main groups. They were attempting to surround the defensive positions from multiple directions. General Corvin commanded coalition forces from his flagship. He ordered his vessels to shift and block the flanking movements. The Relentless and Defiant led the human mobile reserve against the Krell right flank. Nicole coordinated perfectly with Shaw. Their ships moved together like dancers performing a rehearsed routine. They hit the Krell formation hard, disrupting the attempted maneuver. Kate identified the Krell flagship on her sensors. It was exactly where she predicted, at the center of the formation. The ship was enormous, dwarfing even the largest human vessels. She reported her finding to Jacob, who immediately began forming a plan to engage it directly. Hours passed as the battle raged. Ships on both sides took damage. 2 coalition cruisers were destroyed. Their crews managed to evacuate in escape pods before the ships exploded. A Krell battleship met a spectacular end when a lucky shot from a defense platform penetrated its reactor containment. The explosion was visible from the planet's surface. Jacob watched the tactical display carefully. He analyzed how the battle was developing. The Krell were skilled and disciplined fighters, but they were adapting to human tactics slowly. They had expected coalition forces to fight using established patterns. The presence of human vessels had disrupted those patterns completely. He opened a private communication channel to Nicole and Shaw. He outlined his plan. The Vanguard would make a direct assault on the Krell flagship. The Relentless and Defiant would provide covering fire and deal with escort vessels. It was a risky plan, but they needed decisive action to break the current stalemate. Nicole acknowledged the order immediately. She understood the risks but trusted Jacob's judgment. Shaw hesitated for just a moment before agreeing. He also saw the necessity. This battle could not continue as a grinding war of attrition. The defensive forces would eventually be worn down. The 3 human vessels broke formation and accelerated toward the Krell flagship. Their approach did not go unnoticed. Several Krell vessels moved to intercept them, but the Relentless and Defiant engaged these interceptors ferociously, clearing a path for the Vanguard. Kate rerouted power from non-essential systems. Everything went to weapons and shields. The ship shuddered as Krell fire struck the shields repeatedly. Warning alarms sounded throughout the bridge, but the shields held. They were getting closer to the flagship with each passing second. Jacob gave the order to fire everything. Paul unleashed the Vanguard's full arsenal. Magnetic accelerator cannons fired continuously. Missile pods launched their entire payload. Point defense lasers swept across space targeting Krell fighters. The barrage was absolutely devastating. The Krell flagship's shields flickered wildly under the concentrated assault. They had been designed to withstand normal weapons fire, but this level of kinetic bombardment was beyond their capacity. The shields failed completely, leaving the hull exposed to direct hits. Aboard the Dominion, Empress Valerix felt her fortress shake violently. Damage reports flooded in from all sections. Multiple hull breaches, Weapon systems offline. Shield generators destroyed. Emergency power only. She looked at the tactical display showing the human vessel responsible for this damage. For the first time in 2 centuries, Valorix felt genuine doubt. These humans had been isolated for 300 years. Yet they possessed technology and tactics that matched or exceeded her own forces. How was this possible? What had they been doing during their long absence? Fleet Commander Draxon urged her to order a retreat. They could regroup with reinforcements and return stronger. But Valorix was not one to flee from battle. She had never retreated in her entire reign. She ordered all remaining vessels to focus their fire on the human flagship. If she was going to lose, she would take them with her. The Vanguard became the target of every Krell ship in range. Energy beams and missiles converged on it from all directions. The shields collapsed under the overwhelming assault. Hull plating buckled and tore. Alarms screamed throughout the ship. Small fires broke out in several sections. Kate reported critical damage to multiple systems. Life support was failing in 3 decks. Main engines were damaged. Weapon systems were overheating. They could not take much more punishment. The Vanguard was tough, but it had limits. General Corvin saw the desperate situation from his command ship. The Vanguard had given everything to damage the Krell flagship. Now it was in serious danger. He made his decision instantly. He ordered a full assault on the Dominion by all available Coalition vessels. 15 Coalition ships turned and accelerated toward the Krell flagship. They added their firepower to the attack. Plasma beams, missiles, and kinetic weapons all struck the Dominion simultaneously. The combined assault was more than even that massive fortress could withstand. Explosions rippled across the Dominion's hull. Secondary detonations indicated catastrophic damage to internal systems. The ship's main reactor began to destabilize. Power fluctuated wildly. The flagship started to list badly as its propulsion systems failed one by one. Empress Valorix realized with bitter clarity that the battle was lost. Her flagship was dying. Her fleet was being destroyed. She had underestimated these humans badly. Pride had made her foolish. She gave an order she had never given in 200 years of rule. Retreat. All ships should disengage and escape. The remaining Krell vessels broke off their attacks. They turned and activated their faster-than-light drives. One by one, they jumped away to safety. They left the crippled Dominion behind. There was no time to rescue it. Escape was all that mattered now. On the Vanguard's bridge, crew members erupted in cheers. They had done it. Against impossible odds, they had won. The Krell fleet was routed. The frontier colonies were safe. Jacob allowed himself a moment of relief before ordering damage control teams to begin emergency repairs. Kate pulled up casualty reports from across the fleet. The numbers were sobering. 2 Coalition cruisers lost with all hands, 3 other vessels heavily damaged and barely functional. The Vanguard itself would need weeks of extensive repair work. Many crew members were injured, but the colonies were safe. The Krell had been handed their first major defeat. The price was high, but the victory was real. Everyone felt the weight of what they had accomplished. In the days that followed, word of the battle spread throughout the galaxy. Coalition species celebrated the victory. More importantly, they celebrated their new human allies. Humanity was no longer a legend or a myth. They were real. They were powerful. And they stood with the Coalition against tyranny. For the Krell Empire, the defeat was shocking. Empress Valorix survived, rescued from the Dominion before it exploded. But her reputation for invincibility was shattered. Krell expansion slowed dramatically as they reassessed their entire strategy. The humans had changed everything. News broadcasts across Coalition space showed footage of the battle. They showed human ships fighting alongside Coalition vessels. They showed the Krell flagship being destroyed. The images were powerful and inspiring. Hope began to grow in places where it had been absent for years. Jacob stood in the observation deck of the Vanguard. Through the reinforced windows, he could see repair crews working on the hull damage. Sparks flew from welding torches. Replacement armor plates were being installed. The ship would fly again soon. Kate joined him at the window. She followed his gaze to the ongoing repairs. She asked quietly if he thought they had made the right choice. Revealing humanity's existence had changed everything. There was no way to know if it was truly the right decision. Jacob considered her question carefully. He understood her doubts. The future was uncertain and dangerous, but he believed they had made the only choice they could. Isolation had served its purpose. Humanity had healed and grown strong. Now it was time to rejoin the galactic community as equals and allies. The war was far from over. The Krell would not give up easily. There would be more battles, more losses, more challenges ahead. But humanity had proven something vital. They had proven that legends could become reality, that ancient stories could become present-day truth. More than that, they had proven that different species could stand together successfully. When they combined their strengths and supported each other's weaknesses, they could face any threat. Unity was more powerful than any weapon. 3 months passed after the battle at the frontier colonies. The galaxy had changed in that time. News of humanity's return spread to every corner of known space. Reactions varied greatly depending on who received the news. Coalition worlds celebrated. Festivals were held in major cities. Children learned new songs about the legendary humans who came back to help fight the Krell. Artists created sculptures and paintings depicting human ships alongside coalition vessels. Hope had returned after years of slowly losing ground to the Krell Empire. The Krell Empire reacted very differently. Internal debates raged among their leadership. Some factions wanted to assemble an even larger fleet and crush both the coalition and humans. Others argued for a different approach. Perhaps negotiation was better than continued warfare. The defeat had shaken their confidence deeply. Commander Jacob Harris returned to Earth for the first time in 5 years. His ship had been fully repaired and upgraded with new systems. As the Vanguard entered Earth's solar system, he stood on the bridge looking at the blue and green planet ahead. It felt strange to be home after so long away. Kate stood beside him at the window. She had grown up on Earth but left when she was young to join the military. Seeing it again brought back memories of her childhood, simple times before war and responsibility. She wondered if those times could ever return. Earth Command had summoned Jacob for a full debriefing and planning session. Military and civilian leaders wanted to hear directly from him about the battles. They needed to understand the Krell better. They also needed to plan for the future of the Human Coalition Alliance. The meeting took place in a large conference room deep inside Earth Command headquarters. Dozens of high-ranking officials sat around a circular table. Holographic displays showed star maps and battle recordings. Everyone watched as Jacob gave his report. He spoke for over an hour. He described the first contact with coalition forces, the meeting with the High Council, the joint operation to capture the Krell Depot, the desperate defense of the frontier colonies. He explained Krell tactics and capabilities in detail. Admiral Lawrence Chen listened carefully. He was the head of Earth's military forces. He had gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. When Jacob finished speaking, Chen asked the most important question. Could humanity and the coalition actually win this war? Jacob considered the question seriously. He said yes, victory was possible, but it would not be easy or quick. The Krell Empire was large and powerful. They had been expanding for decades. Defeating them would require years of effort, many battles, and significant sacrifice from both humans and coalition species. However, the alliance gave them real advantages. Human technology combined with coalition resources created a force the Krell could not easily overcome. More importantly, the coalition had something the Krell lacked. They fought for freedom and mutual cooperation, not domination. That gave them strength the Krell could never match. Director Sophie Martinez spoke next. She led the diplomatic corps that handled relations with other species. She had been working to establish formal treaties with the coalition. She asked Jacob about cultural differences. Were humans and coalition species compatible enough for long-term cooperation? Jacob smiled slightly. He said the differences were actually an advantage. Each species brought unique perspectives and capabilities. Humans excelled at adaptive tactics and electronic warfare. The Saurians, like Chancellor Vrix, were masterful diplomats. The Hive species, like General Corvin, were brilliant at coordinated operations. The Crystalline Collective possessed advanced scientific knowledge. Working together meant learning from each other. It meant combining strengths to cover weaknesses. Yes, there were challenges. Communication was sometimes difficult. Cultural misunderstandings happened. But these problems could be solved with patience and effort. Kate added her own observations. She had spent more time interacting with coalition crew members than most humans. She said they were not so different fundamentally. They had families they wanted to protect, homes they wanted to keep safe, dreams for better futures. These basic desires were universal across species. The meeting continued for hours. Plans were made for expanding the human fleet. Resources were allocated for building new ships and weapons. Diplomatic missions were scheduled to strengthen ties with coalition worlds. Training programs were established to help human and coalition forces work together more effectively. When the meeting finally ended, Jacob felt exhausted, but satisfied. Earth's leadership understood the situation clearly now. They were committed to the alliance. Humanity would not abandon the coalition or return to isolation. They were part of the galactic community again, for better or worse. That evening, Jacob walked through the streets of New Geneva. This city had been his home before joining the military. It had changed in the years he was away. New buildings had been constructed. Old neighborhoods had been renovated. But the essence remained the same. He stopped at a small park and sat on a bench. Children played on equipment nearby. Their laughter carried on the breeze. Parents watched them with smiles. It was a peaceful scene. This was what they were fighting to protect. Not just human worlds, but moments like this. Simple happiness. Basic peace. Kate found him there an hour later. She sat down beside him without speaking. They watched the sunset together. The sky turned orange and pink and purple. Stars began to appear as darkness fell. Somewhere among those stars, the war continued. But here, for this moment, there was peace. Kate broke the silence. She said she had been thinking about Ambassador Lyra's question from months ago. Why had humans chosen this moment to reveal themselves? Was it really just about stopping the Krell? Jacob thought about his answer carefully. He said the Krell were definitely a major factor, but there was more to it. Humanity had spent 300 years focused inward. They had solved their internal problems and built a strong civilization, but isolation had cost too. They had lost connections with other species. They had missed opportunities for growth through interaction. The legends that other species told about humans were fading. Soon humans would be completely forgotten, becoming nothing more than ancient myths with no basis in reality. That was a kind of death, not physical but cultural. Humanity would cease to matter in the larger galaxy. By revealing themselves now, humans reclaimed their place in galactic history. They showed that legends could be real, that ancient stories held truth. They demonstrated that isolation was not the only path to safety. Sometimes the best protection came from standing with allies. Kate nodded slowly. She understood what he meant. The decision to emerge from hiding was about more than military strategy. It was about identity, about being part of something larger than just humanity, about contributing to the galaxy instead of just existing separately from it. Weeks later, Jacob returned to space. The Vanguard joined a mixed fleet of human and coalition vessels. They patrolled the border regions, watching for Krell movements. Small skirmishes occurred occasionally, but no major battles. The Krell were being cautious now. Nicole visited the Vanguard during a supply stop. She and Jacob discussed the changing nature of the war. The Krell were adapting to human tactics. They had developed new shield configurations that resisted kinetic weapons better. They were using more electronic countermeasures. The easy victories were definitely over, but the coalition was adapting too. They were learning from human technology and tactics. New weapons were being developed. Training was improving. The gap between coalition and Krell capabilities was narrowing. For the first time in years, the coalition was not just surviving. They were starting to push back. General Corvin sent a message to Jacob. He said the High Council wanted to award him and his crew medals for their service. Jacob politely declined. He said medals were not necessary. The alliance itself was reward enough. Working together with the coalition toward shared goals was its own achievement. Corvin seemed to understand. He said that humans had a different way of thinking about honor and recognition. But he wanted Jacob to know that the coalition would never forget what humans had done. When everyone believed the war was lost, humanity appeared and changed everything. That would be remembered for generations. As months became years, the war continued. There were victories and defeats on both sides. Territory changed hands. New heroes emerged and old ones fell in battle. The galaxy learned to accept humanity as a real presence rather than a legend. Young beings of various species grew up hearing stories about the humans who returned to help fight tyranny. These were not ancient legends anymore. They were current events. Living history being written day by day. Jacob Harris became a symbol of the alliance. His face appeared in recruitment materials. His speeches were quoted in news broadcasts, but he never forgot that he was just one person. The real strength came from everyone working together. Humans and aliens side by side, building a better future. The legends had said humans were explorers, warriors, diplomats, and builders. Those legends had been true once. They had faded during the long isolation, but now they lived again, embodied in people like Jacob, Kate, Nicole, and countless others serving in the fleet. Humanity had returned to the stars. Not as conquerors or destroyers, not as primitive newcomers or mythical beings, but as partners and allies.